Now after I trimmed those, I put a picture on our Facebook page, and we had somebody on there that said, wait. I thought in your little onion tip video you said not to trim. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? I hope everybody out there is having an amazing day. It is October 18th here in South Georgia. We got a cold front moving through this week. It's supposed to get pretty chilly, especially for the middle of October. And y'all know me, if it gets in the 50s, I'll start shivering. I'm just not used to it, and we haven't had time to really acclimate to it. Now, I think tonight we're supposed to only get down to maybe high 30s, but then tomorrow night, you know, things could get a little iffy. Last time I looked, it said about 34 or 35. We're not going to cover frost protection and what we're worried about on this video. I may do a video tomorrow, and we'll show you what we're going to try to protect and what we're just going to cross our fingers on. But anyway, we've got a few things we need to do in the garden today. We're going to start out by working here in our in-ground fall garden plot where we have a lot of cool season veggies planted. We're going to try to get these side dressed, get them fertilized, talk a little bit about using organic fertilizers in the winter months. Does it work? Does it not work? And then we're going to head on over to the greenhouse where it's a little warmer, show you what's going on there, and we might have to give our onions a little haircut. So we've got 7 rows of all kind of cool season veggies here, and then some of those habanero peppers on the end that we're probably going to have to cover before tomorrow night. But all this stuff is growing really well. It's probably doubled in size since the last time I showed you this plot. We do have a few little trials going on in here, comparing some different varieties. This little trial of broccoli here, we've done this comparison lots of times, and the results always seem to kind of be the same. But it's interesting to see, at least right now, that this imperial variety of broccoli seems to be outpacing the green magic a little bit, but both are looking pretty good, just slightly larger plants with the imperial. Then we've got our cauliflower, which is really starting to take off. We only planted one variety of cauliflower, which is called Amazing, I believe, so nothing to really compare this row to. We've got 2 rows of Brussels sprouts here. We planted the same variety here, a variety called Dagan that we've never tried before. Those are taking off and looking good. Now over here with the cabbage, we do have several varieties planted, so we can do some comparisons here. So we've got this megaton variety of cabbage right here. We're going to try to grow a monster head of cabbage. That's why we have these planted on a 2-foot spacing. We added some of the bedding from our chicken tractor, give it a little extra nitrogen. Now this isn't our best looking cabbage so far, but I imagine by the time it's all over with, this will end up producing the largest heads. And then with our second row of cabbage here, we've got a direct comparison with 2 different varieties. We've got Capture on the far end there. We grew that one last year and it did pretty well for us. And then on the front of the row, we've got Bravo, which is a variety I've never grown, but I've heard a lot about. Old Cajun Bee over in Louisiana loves this variety. So it's pretty easy to tell at this point that the Bravo cabbage is outpacing the Capture cabbage by a good bit. I'd say the Bravo plants are probably twice the size of the Capture plants so far. Now that could be because this Bravo is a more heat tolerant variety. It's supposed to do really well down here in the south, so it could be liking some of the warmer afternoons we've been having, whereas the Capture is waiting to excel when it gets cold. And I was talking to Cajun Bee the other day on the phone, and he said he's got Bravo cabbage that's already forming heads. Now he plants his way earlier than I do, even though he's farther south than I am. I get scared to plant fall veggies too early in the late summer, early fall months, because if it's too hot, I don't get a very good transplant survival rate. But he says the Bravo can take it. So this Bravo keeps performing as well as it is. Next year I may try to plant it even sooner like Cajun Bee does and see if we can get some even earlier production. Now all the plants in this plot, especially this broccoli here, look nice and dark green and healthy right now. But that doesn't mean they'll stay that way all the way to maturity. So we all know, or hopefully we all know, that cabbage is a pretty heavy feeder. It likes plenty of nitrogen, and then broccoli, cauliflower, and Brussels sprouts can be pretty demanding as well. So it has been my experiences over the years that you've got to feed these cool season veggies pretty well early on to get the harvest that you want to get in the end. So with the broccoli and the cauliflower, if we don't feed those well early on, what end up happening is the plants won't get very big. We'll end up forming some broccoli and cauliflower heads, but those heads are going to kind of be small because the heads are kind of proportionate to the end plant size. Same thing with the cabbage. If we don't feed the cabbage well enough, when it does start forming heads, the plants won't be very big and then the heads won't be very big either. So we got to make sure we feed these plants well early on. It's kind of like corn. You know, if you don't get corn nice and green and fertile looking early on, you're going to have a pretty poor corn harvest when it does mature. Same thing with the cabbage, broccoli, cauliflower, all that stuff. It's not like, say, a pepper plant or indeterminate tomato plant, where if it starts looking like it's struggling, you can kind of bring it back around because it's got a long window of production. Really only got one harvest out of all these plants here. Yeah, we'll get some side shoot production on the broccoli, but what we're going for is that big broccoli head. So we got to make sure we do all the right things now so that there's plenty of nutrients there to get that big harvest that we want to get. And when you're fertilizing cool season veggies, especially when you're growing them this time of year as temperatures are cooling, not warming like they are in spring, you have to realize that things are going to work a little slower. Because it's cooler outside, the microbial activity in the soil is reduced, the soil temp is down, so the enzymatic activity, the breakdown of the fertilizers is going to be slower. Now you will see some sources that will tell you that organic fertilizers, like for instance this Nature Safe right here that we'll be using in a minute, don't work well at all during the cooler months because it's too cold for the soil biology to convert this stuff into usable nutrients for the plants. Now, I'm sure that is the case farther up north, but it doesn't seem to be the case for me down here. I'm not sure where the threshold is, but down here, we'll still get some warm swings during the winter months. Once this cool spell's out of here, I'm sure we'll be back to, 82 degrees during the day. So it doesn't get cold enough down here to stop the breakdown of this organic fertilizer. Yeah, it may act a little slower, but it's still really effective for us during the winter months. Like I said, I don't know how far north you got to get before this stuff doesn't work well at all, but down here it still works. And just as a side note, over the last couple of years, we've really simplified our fertilizer program, and I like this simplification. So we really only use mostly 3 products. So we use the Nature Safe 855, which you can't see, but it's underneath every row of those plants out there. We use that as a pre-plant fertilizer. And then we use this Nature Safe 1300 that we're going to be using today for heavy feeders that like a lot of extra nitrogen, corn, onions, garlic, some of this cabbage and stuff we have planted out here today. And then we use the AgriThrive stuff to give us a lot of micros and also give us a little bit of those major nutrients as well. Now the Nature Safe stuff can be hard to find, and if you order it online, the shipping can be pretty expensive. Luckily, we have a couple fertilizer dealerships here that carry it, so that's where I'm able to get most of mine. The AgriThrive is really easy to find at agrithrive.com, and as always, you can use the code LazyDogFarm to get 10% off. So even though this stuff is looking pretty healthy right now, we want to keep it that way and make sure we get some nice, consistent, bountiful harvest out of here in a few months. So we're going to take one of these pitchers of Nature Safe 1300, one pitcher beside each row, and then I'm going to come in here with my little 3-tine cultivator and scratch it in a little bit. All right. We got all 7 rows side dressed and scratched in there a little bit. Now you will see some people, when they side dress like this, they'll make a little trench beside the row, put their fertilizer in that trench and then cover it up. I haven't found that to be necessary with this Nature Safe stuff. Just scratching it in a little bit, it works just fine like that. Now I do need to water this plot today. I've been having to water every other day as dry as it's been, but I'm not going to use the drip today. I'm going to use the overhead sprinkler to try to get some of that nature safe to start dissolving and start breaking down. If we had rain in the forecast, I would just turn on the drip, but it looks like it's going to be a good little while before we get another rain again. So get that stuff starting to break down a little bit. We'll get a little bit of a quick pop because that nature safe does have a little ammonia based nitrogen in it. And then once we get that quick pop, we'll benefit from all the slow release as well. And now let's mosey on over here to the greenhouse, where we've been having to do a little bit of temperature control lately. Now some of y'all may already know we don't have a fan or a heater inside our little 16 by 10 greenhouse here. Now I do have 2 electrical outlets in there. I can plug in an electric heater during the winter time if it's going to get really cold, like down in the 20s. But for the most part, we control the temperature in here by these roll up sides. So all we have to do is just kind of roll that up if we want to cool it off a little bit, or roll it down if we want to warm it up some. Now since the spring up until about a couple weeks ago, we kept the sides rolled all the way up, both sides, because our goal was for this thing not to get too hot, especially when we were germinating a lot of those cool season veggies that won't germinate well if the soil temperatures are too warm. So for a long time, we've just had both sides rolled all the way up to keep this thing from getting too hot. But over the last couple weeks, I noticed that my lettuce transplants and my mustard transplants that I'll show you in a minute weren't growing quite as fast as they should be. And I got to thinking about what the problem could be. They look nice and healthy, so I didn't think it was a fertility issue. And then I got to thinking, well, it's been getting down in the 50s at night. Maybe that real cool weather at night is kind of stunting them a little bit. And so 2 weeks ago, I started kind of doing some temperature management here. So what I'll do is late in the afternoon, I'll come out here, or right before dark, and I'll basically roll these either all the way down or almost all the way down, and then I'll come back out here about 11 o'clock in the morning or around noon, and then roll them about halfway back up. Now, I do have a temperature or a thermometer in there that I look at from time to time, but I basically just go by the feel of it. I can feel if it's too hot in there or if it's too cool in there. So just been managing it lately, coming out here every day and kind of going up or down depending on the outside temperature. Now with this real cool spell coming in here the next couple days, the sides will probably stay down all day. We'll just have to keep an eye on it and see what it feels like in there. Now let's go inside and see what we got going on in here. So on this side we got some leftovers, some stuff waiting to be planted, and some stuff that's not quite ready yet. So we've got some collards and kale leftovers here. We've just been giving away. We planted all we wanted to plant. Same thing here with some of these herbs and celery. We've put in the ground all we're going to put in the ground. So just hanging on to those leftovers for another couple weeks. And if we don't have any more takers, we'll just dump them in the compost bin. The stuff you see right here, the lettuce, the mustard, and the pak choi, was the stuff that was growing kind of slow. But once we started rolling down those sides, cranking up the temp a little bit in here at night, they really started to take off, and you can see they look ready to go in the ground, the lettuce and the mustard and the pak choi. So as soon as this cool spell is over with, we're going to start planting these. Then we've got our rally leeks here, which didn't germinate quite as well as I would have liked, but we got some coming up there. I think we'll still have enough for a decent planting of them. Doesn't take a whole lot of leeks, and I usually tend to plant too many. Now our culantro back here has not germinated, and from what I've read in the comments on the video where we planted this, I'm not the only one who's had issues getting this stuff to germinate. So back to the drawing board on the culantro germination. We'll try again in the spring. Then we've got all our beautiful onions. So these 2 trays right here were planted several weeks after those 3 trays there. This is the Georgia Boy variety and the white, I think it's called White Phantom variety. I decided on these a little later in the game, so these are just starting to look good. Got pretty good germination there. Still several weeks to go before they're ready to go in the ground. Now the first round that we planted, they are not too far from being ready to go in the ground. Still probably another week or two. So this first tray here, you can see, maybe if I get down here, you can see the tops look a little shorter than those tops over there. And that's because I gave this tray a trim yesterday. Now after I trimmed those, I put a picture on our Facebook page, and we had somebody on there that said, wait. I thought in your little onion tip video you said not to trim the onion tops, and I did say that in that video. I was referring to once we transplant them in the ground, don't mess with the tops. Here in the greenhouse, if we trim these little seedlings here, it actually toughens up the seedlings and gives you a better transplant survival rate, makes them a little more hardy. So this is something we experimented with doing last year. We had heard a lot of viewers talk about doing it. We really liked it, and so we're continuing the practice this year. So we already trimmed this tray of DP sweet onions here. We need to take care of these other two trays. And there's not like a certain length you're looking for when you trim these. We trimmed these back to about 3 inches above soil level. I think that's pretty good. It's what I did last year. It seemed to work well, and I even trimmed some of them multiple times last year, and it seemed to just make them more hardier and more hardier. Now you don't want to do this right before you're going to put them in the ground, so do it a week or so before you put them in the ground. That way they can recover a little bit. Now if you're going to trim onion seedlings like this, you're going to need some greenhouse approved Conair onion scissors like I have right here, and I'll put a link below if you're watching on YouTube where you can grab some of these on Amazon. That way you only trimming your onions with certified onion shears. And the way you do this is just kind of like cutting hair. Just come in here and trim them up. It's kind of fun to do. I've never tried cutting hair before, but this is as close as I'll get, I reckon. You could probably take some hedge shears and do this if you wanted to do it real quick. So there's kind of an art to it, doing it like this. A little more fun to do it this way. So we're just trying to get them even across the board there. Now on one of the market farming Facebook groups that I belong to, saw somebody on there trying to figure out a way to do this without dropping the tops back into the soil. They were worried about, you know, that creating an avenue for disease or something, but I haven't noticed that to be a problem with mine. I guess you could lean the tray on its side so the tops fell on the ground if you were really worried about that. That looks pretty good there. Oh, missed one little straggler hair. Grab that one. Get that one. I think that's pretty dang even. So we got that looking pretty even there. Now we may trim these again, we may not. If they start looking kind of tall and lanky before we're ready to go in the ground with them, we may give them another little trim. If not, we may not trim them again at all, and we'll put them in the ground in early to mid-November. So that's what's happening on that side of the greenhouse. On the other side over here, already got a little fig propagation action going on. Now not all of our fig trees have started losing their leaves, but some of them have, and as such we've already started propagating some here in the greenhouse. Now we are doing this quite a bit differently than we did last year. So last year we started all our fig trees in these tree pots here. These are 4 by 4, 9 inches deep. Now these worked really well last year. The only issue with these I have is that they take up a good bit of space per tree, and they also require a good bit of potting mix, pro mix, whatever you're going to use. Now I don't know if y'all checked the prices on good potting mix or seed starting mix lately, but it has gone up significantly. I used to be able to get a bale of pro mix locally for about $50–$55 a bale. Last time I bought some, it went up to about $80 to $85 a bale. So it's went up quite a good bit. Now I did see on Amazon the other day they had a bale of pro mix for like 77 bucks, you know, free shipping and everything, which is an absolute steal. I don't know how long that'll last, but if it's still there, you should take advantage of that. Having it delivered for that price is a definite good deal. So when we're propagating these little fig trees like this, not all of the cuttings actually take or form leaves and then roots. Some of the cuttings are just duds. You don't always get 100% take rate. Some varieties are really hard to propagate. Other varieties are really easy and you'll get very close to 100% take rate. So because not all of them will take, I don't want to waste Pro Mix on cuttings that don't end up doing anything, because I don't really like to reuse this stuff once I put it in a pot and tried to grow something in it. So this year what I'm doing is starting all my cuttings in these little 2.5 inch pots, and for the ones that take, I'll then later step them up to these larger pots. That's going to give me more room to do more cuttings here in my greenhouse, because this takes up a lot less space than this, and I also won't use near as much Pro Mix on the cuttings that don't end up growing out. Now once I've got a nice little mini fig tree in these 2.5 inch pots with leaves and roots, I'll then step them up to these bigger pots here, and I've got a buddy that's got a nursery in a nearby town. I'll take all the ones in these big pots to him. He's got room to store them there. So I'm going to propagate them all here, get them started here, and then take the finished trees to him and let him hold on to them until we're ready to start shipping them in the spring. So we're still going to ship them in these nice bigger pots here. We're just starting them in these. Now the other thing I'm doing differently this year is I'm starting a lot sooner. So last year we didn't start taking cuttings and propagating trees until I think late December, maybe early January, when we decided, okay, this is something we really want to do. And it was kind of tough because it was pretty cold outside. I was having to run a heater in here just to keep the temperature around 70 degrees to get these things to root. So this year, what I'm going to do is start taking cuttings as soon as the trees lose leaves. We could have all the trees lose leaves after this cold spell. We'll just have to see. But as soon as they lose their leaves, I'm taking cuttings. That way the wood isn't dried out and it's still relatively warm, so the cuttings will take and start growing a lot faster. You can see here with this LSU Tiger cutting, I put this in this pot just about a week ago, and we've already got a nice little bud there. So starting them earlier seems to work a little better. These are taking off a little faster, and then we'll just step them up, move them to my buddy's greenhouse as we need to make more and more room in here. Now we have already had a couple of people asking whether or not we're going to take pre-orders for our fig trees, and the reason I can't take pre-orders is because I really don't know my inventory until I try to propagate all the trees that I'm going to try to propagate. Like I said, some of them take really well, some of them we have a 50% or a little less take rate on them, so it's really hard to tell how many trees of each variety I'm going to have until I go through this whole propagation process. And then once I know how many good trees I have in these pots, I can do an inventory count. Then I can put them on the website and take pre-orders. But it's still going to be at least another few months before we know exactly how many trees of each variety we're going to have. So stay tuned for more on the fig tree propagation. We'll be sure to provide updates as we go along, as we start seeing some leaves and roots on some of these and start stepping them up, telling you which varieties seem to be doing well, which varieties we may be struggling with. And I'm going to try to have a lot of trees of that GE Neri variety or Generi variety. Had a lot of people asking about those. Those are the real big ones. So I'm going to try to have at least 200 trees of that variety. We'll see what we end up with after we do the propagation, but I'm planning ahead because we had a lot of people asking for that one. So I hope you enjoyed the video today. It was nice to get some of those cool seasoned veggies side dressed. And let me know in the comments below what your experiences have been using organic fertilizers in the winter. Are you able to get them to convert and be effective in your soils, or have you found that they're just too slow for you and you have to use more synthetic stuff in the cooler months? As always, if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to check out our affiliate links below. A lot of great companies that we use in our gardens here at Lazy Dog Farm. Even got some coupon codes for some of those companies so you can take advantage of those discounts. Don't forget to go check out our website, lazydogfarm.com, where we've got our garden blog, recipes, hats, shirts, recommended products, all kind of good stuff over there. If you did enjoy the video, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification button, like, and share, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.
Oh, farewell, by the beauty of your life.